Hi, I'm Allan Finney, and I promised to make a little video about what our recent Zoom was about. It was the biggest Zoom I've ever been on or hosted. We had 38, 40 people, something like that. There's tremendous interest in what we're doing right now for a couple of reasons. And that is that we have had two high profile arrests for ayahuasca in Canada at this time. And one involved a SWAT team, if you can imagine that. And so that's the for the last 8 months I've been dealing with the issues and the legalities and the political implications of all of this. And we now have a game plan and a strategy and a way forward. So let me just bring you up to date on all of this stuff. And the first thing that I want to start off with is, let me do the screen sharing here. Chad Gillies, get on your knees. This is Mr. Chad Gillies. He was arrested by a SWAT team in Calgary, Alberta for importing 2 kilograms of DMT. That's how the charges showed up in court, as 2 kilograms of DMT, which is very, very important point here. 2 kilograms of DMT. And it was 2 kilograms of a black tar-like substance that showed up in court, not 2 kilograms of DMT, which we'll get into that distinction a little bit later. And the other bust for this was out in Nova Scotia, and the facilitator there is really not interested in going public. Chad is interested in whatever it takes. Chad's a warrior, and but this was another arrest, and this was back in 2022. And pardon me for missing that because let's see, screen share. How do I stop that now? First day with my new software. Where are we? Riverside FM. Stop sharing. Sorry about that. So these two arrests happened in Canada. It's had a chilling effect on ayahuasca ceremonies right across Canada. Facilitators wondering who's going to be next. And the other problem is that shipments of ayahuasca into Canada are now being routinely stopped at the border. And 5 years ago when I was doing my work in Canada, we didn't have a problem crossing the border. We maybe had one or two shipments that were confiscated coming into Canada, and now routinely shipments are being confiscated coming into Canada. So, that's the bad news in all of this situation. And we're at a turning point for ayahuasca ceremonies in Canada. If we don't do something about this right now, next year, you won't be able to find an ayahuasca ceremony in Canada. You won't be able to find a facilitator operating in Canada, in my opinion, because we've seen these same types of things happen in other jurisdictions. In Spain, they tried the same thing. They brought in SWAT teams to go out to ayahuasca ceremonies, and it's just nonsense, which I'll get into why exactly it is nonsense. And in the European Union a few years back, and you probably never ever heard about this was never publicized, but the European Union did away with religious exemptions for ayahuasca in the European Union. So the established ayahuasca churches in the European Union, mainly the Santo Daime and UDV, had established churches there that were legally serving ayahuasca, and they shut it down. So the writing's on the wall here. I'm also the founder of the Companionship of the Sacred Vine, which got a legal Section 56 to serve ayahuasca at our center in Quebec. We haven't, that was almost a year and a half ago. We haven't served a drop of ayahuasca under the Section 56, which is a whole which is a whole different story, and I'll make a separate video about that. But let me just say this about Section 56. Section 56 is not set up so that you can have your religious right to this sacred plant medicine, and it is a sacred plant medicine, and they're not there to help you out. In fact, that whole program is a whitewash, which like I say, I don't want to, there's so many details about all this stuff that I'm not going to, like I say, I'll deal with that in a separate thing. So let me see if I can keep on track here. So that's the bad news. That's where we're at historically in Canada at this point in time. So for the last 8 months, I have been immersed in the issues surrounding these arrests and what they're attempting to do and how they're attempting to do it. And so that's, the arrests are the bad news, but the arrests also give us an opportunity. In every bad situation, there is an opportunity, and we have an opportunity here to do something about retaking our rights to an ancestral medicine. And when I say ancestral medicine, let me just put this in context for you. Ayahuasca, the use of ayahuasca dates back to prehistory. It dates back before the establishment of Christianity. It is a sacred medicine that has been served for thousands of years. In the Atacama Desert, they found traces, 3,000 years ago, they found traces of ayahuasca analogs in the Peruvian mummies in the Atacama Desert. It's not in, it wasn't in the Amazon. These were in Chile, in the Atacama Desert. And that was dated scientifically to 3,000 years. Roger Lopez, very seventh generation lineage shaman that I worked with and now deceased, he told me that the Inca civilization taught the Amazonian Indians how to use ayahuasca. This is prehistorical stuff, and I just wanted to put put this into context about what they're attempting to do with ayahuasca and the legalities around ayahuasca. This is sacred medicine in use for thousands of years, scientifically verified, goes back to prehistory. So let's deal with what we're going to deal with here. And like I said, for the last 8 months, I've been diving into the issues around this. Well, I've been diving into it. I've been helped by all kinds of people, and I will make a big shout out, thank you at the end of this video for all the people that were involved in finding out the details about this and formulating a strategy to counter this nonsense that's going on right now. So let me get specific about this. These arrests are unethical and corrupt. And that's not just me saying it because I happen to have some information about a sacred medicine. First thing is selective enforcement. These arrests are something called selective enforcement. So we have access to information documents, like freedom of information documents, that show that the RCMP have not laid a charge for DMT in the past year. The city of Calgary has not laid a charge for ayahuasca in the past year. In both cases, with both police forces confirmed in official documents, DMT is not a recognized policing priority, and it's not a recognized public threat. So that so selective enforcement is viewed in legal circles as unethical at best and corrupt at worst. So this puts us firmly into the realm of unethical arrests at best and corrupt arrests at worst. The next thing that brings up then is how do these arrests move forward? Well, all of these are, these arrests are prosecuted by federal crown prosecutors in Canada. It's not a provincial matter to bring these matters in front of the court. So let me just share a screen here because this is some of the nonsense that's going on right now in Canada. Let's see. Where is... Oh, maybe I don't have that. No. Anyway, if I could have showed you this webpage that I should have had set up properly before I started this video. The Crown prosecutors have guidelines that they use. And in the published guidelines for the Crown Prosecutor Services of Canada, the first line, there's two principles that a Crown prosecutor must use to bring a case in front of a judge. And that is, the first one is that the arrest must be in the public interest. The arrest must be in the public interest. It must be in the public interest. So if there's a fentanyl lab, that's in the public interest, a cocaine lab or whatever. And yet these charges went forward, and again, I'm going to get lost in the details here, but these arrests are not in the public interest. And the other thing is there must be a reasonable chance of conviction, which is, I'm going to get to in a few minutes as to why that whole thing is nonsensical. So let me bring up another point, religious discrimination. Both of these arrests were of members of the Companionship of the Sacred Vine. So you tell me how somebody, one of our members in Eastern Canada, one of our members in Western Canada gets arrested for these ayahuasca DMT offenses. That's 2 out of 38 million people. There's all kinds of ceremonies going on across Canada, right across Canada every weekend. Well, there used to be anyway. And it would be a fairly easy thing for, especially with the investigative tools that police have, to go in and find out who's serving ayahuasca on any given weekend and go in and make the arrest. But these happened against 2 of our members. That's religious discrimination. Well, I'll get into the legalities of this stuff, but the third point being, so we've got selective enforcement, religious discrimination, violation of guidelines. The fourth thing, and this is where the Crown prosecutors and the people involved in these arrests have shot themselves in the foot. Because here is what they're doing. Let me do a screen share, and hopefully I have that screen here ready to go. Refine. Okay, here it is. Okay, I'm going to show you this. Okay, this is what DMT looks like. The charges that were brought forward in a court of law is in Chad Gillies' case, and in the case, it was 2 kilograms. It showed up in court as 2 kilograms of DMT. The arrest in Nova Scotia showed up as 3.2 kilograms of DMT. This is what DMT looks like. Okay, it's a yellowish white powder. The only way 2 kilograms of DMT would be, let's see, stop sharing here. the only way 2 kilograms of DMT could be in court would be is if it was 2 kilograms of this white yellowish powder. There's no other way to get 2 kilograms of DMT into a 2 kilogram package. So in other words, and again, relating back to the court documents, 2 kilograms of a black tar-like substance, which is how it showed up in court documents, is not 2 kilograms of a white yellowish powder of refined DMT. They're two different things. There may be some DMT in their black tar-like substance that they're presenting in court as 2 kilograms of refined DMT, but, okay, so here we get into the science of this. But in that black tar-like substance, there is DMT. It was, did they test for DMT? We don't know. It just showed up in court like that as DMT. But if this indeed was, this black tar-like substance was ayahuasca, there is a way of finding out, well, first thing, just chemically test it and find out what is the percentage of weight of the DMT in this black tar-like substance. And I will show you detection and quantification of psychoactive. Okay, here is a online published study, detection and quantification of psychoactive NN-dimethyltryptamine and ayahuasca brews by blah, 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 blah. And this was done at the behest of the United Nations so that they could, pop people at the border and have a test to determine if there was DMT in said package. So based on their own published studies here of how much DMT could be found in a substance, we can extrapolate how much DMT could potentially be in this black tar-like substance, and this is important. In 2 kilograms of DMT, based on the published studies, there would be 2.95 grams of DMT in the black tar-like substance. 2.95 grams of DMT is what we're talking about here. And these charges are showing up as importing 2 kilograms of DMT. This is where they shot themselves in the foot by bringing charges into a court of law representing 2.95 grams potentially. We don't know. It was never measured, at least not that I've seen or that were in the court documents that I've looked at. 2.95 grams of DMT is not 2 kilograms of DMT. And that's a huge, huge thing. And let me explain why that's where they screwed up. Because, let me share a screen here. It's something called fabricating evidence or falsifying evidence in Canada. And this is something called misleading the justice system. The quick takeaway, let me just read this for you because fabricating evidence is covered in Part 3, blah, blah, blah. And like any effort to subvert justice is dealt with harshly by the courts. It is closely tied in with perjury, which is knowingly giving false evidence in a judicial proceeding while under oath with the intent of misleading a judge or a jury. With the intent of misleading a judge or a jury. If you fabricate any evidence that is to be used in judicial proceeding with the intent to mislead, you can be imprisoned for up to 14 years under Section 1.37 of the Criminal Code of Canada. It should be noted there have been cases of fabricating evidence on both sides of a case with lawyers and police officers facing charges. That is the problem. That is the corner that these people have painted themselves into. They have gone into a court of law saying, Your Honor, this is 2 kilograms of DMT. And it isn't. Demonstrably, it is not. It would be the equivalent of taking 2 kilograms of cocoa powder or cocoa leaves, which they make cocaine out of, and saying to a court of law, that's 2 kilograms of cocaine, Your Honor. What? 2 kilograms of cocaine is a white powder that people snort. It's not 2 kilograms of cocoa leaves. You see what I'm saying here? This is a huge problem for both of these cases. And we have attempted, this wasn't, when we initially set out our white paper on recommendations for enforcement, it's on the Ayahuasca Canada website. Let me, we know what we're talking about here. Where is it? White paper. Okay. All right, so this is, and you can download this off of the Ayahuasca Canada website and read it for yourself. And I would urge you to do that because it's a very good educational document. And let me just scroll up to the top page here. So we put together this white paper, Recommendations for Police Response, and it is a detailed paper, a 30-page paper, and we've got an executive summary in there. If you just want to go and look at the executive summary, we have history, current practices, background, and societal benefits. And we have also added a section on the Alberta arrest of Chad Gillies in there. So, I'd urge you to go download that paper and have a look at that. And why is that significant? Because in that paper, we did the quantification of how much DMT was actually in 2 kilograms of ayahuasca based on published studies. But, it took us months of digging and research and work to find out that that's a serious situation. That representation of 3 grams of ayahuasca is 2 kilograms of DMT. That's a serious situation, but we didn't realize it when we put together the white paper. It was kind of like, wow, this is really messed up, right? Well, it is really messed up, and knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. So when you combine all of these things, selective enforcement, religious discrimination, falsification of evidence, ignoring Crown prosecutors' guidelines. That's the guidelines for the Crown prosecutors. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do as their job as legal representatives of the Crown in a court of law. That's their guiding principles. And all of those things have been ignored, swept under the carpet, swept away, and that's not going to stand. They might want to sweep it under the carpet. They were expecting Chad Gillies to roll over and accept his punishment and job done. We have shut down ayahuasca ceremonies in Canada, and all the facilitators will be, this is intimidation. All of the facilitators will be intimidated and shut their operation down, and haven't we done a great job for getting this dreaded DMT off the streets of Canada? And he didn't do that. The first time I met Chad Gillies, there were some people that said, "Al, have you heard about this court case?" I said, "No, what's going on?" So I got involved with a WhatsApp group with Chad Gillies, and I met Chad, and he's become a very good friend. And what I was wondering was, the first thing I wanted to know was, what are you going to do? He says, "I am going to fight this." He says, "I don't care if I go bankrupt, if whatever happens to me, I am going to fight this. This isn't right." That man is a warrior. And I know what it takes to be an ayahuasca warrior in Canada, to go public with this stuff. Rick Brandle, the Reverend Richard Brandle, and I went public in a major way to get the companionship of the sacred vine, to get that Section 56 exemption. So, sorry, I'm an old man and I get sentimental or emotional or whatever. Sorry, so anyway, Chad Gillies' first words out of his mouth were, I'm going to fight this. And I would urge you to go to the Ayahuasca Canada website, and there is a link for his GoFundMe campaign, or just search for GoFundMe Chad Gillies, and get on the GoFundMe page and throw this. This is costing him tens of thousands of dollars. So I've contributed personally. I'm not exactly a rich man, but I've contributed personally to Chad's GoFundMe, and I believe that anybody out there should, if you believe in this medicine. Anyway, so where does that bring us to? So all this knowledge that we have at this point is highly significant, because there are rules for this stuff. There are legal implications when they go into a court of law. When something is taken into a court of law, there are legal implications that extend to the Crown prosecutors, extend to the lawyers, extend to the accused. There are rules and regulations. One thing, and so that's in a court of law. Outside of the court of law, there are political implications. There are implications for the Crown Prosecutor Services of Canada. And let me just tell you one of the implications for the Crown Prosecutor Services. And this is not fabric. Oh, yeah. This is what I want to show you here. This is the Public Prosecution Service of Canada Public Feedback and Complaints Policy. This policy outlines how the PPFC will handle feedback and complaints it receives from the public. Feedback and complaint, and that's a key thing here. And I will just quit sharing that. So, what does it take to make a complaint to the Crown Prosecutor Services of Canada? It takes an email. You send in an email. And so, which I did. I sent in an email about selective prosecution. I sent in an email about violating guidelines, blah, blah, blah. And so then what happens with that complaint? It goes to somebody, their central committee or their bureaucrats in Ottawa or whoever deals with the complaints. And then they look at that and say, does this have merit? And should we, like in Chad's case, it was in Alberta, and the other case was in Nova Scotia. And they then forward that complaint to the Chief Crown Prosecutor of Alberta, which there's legal implications here in all of this, because as a I forget what the legal term is, as a friend of it's not a friend of the court, as somebody that deals with the court and professional. There's shit falls off my hard drive. And there's so much details to this. But there's a legal implication for a Crown prosecutor that if they know that there is a criminal action taking place in front of the courts, they have a duty as a friend of the, not a friend of the court, whatever it is, they have a duty to do something about that. They have knowledge of falsifying evidence. Why? Because we informed them that they did. And we have credible evidence in that regard. Now, we've heard back from Elizabeth O'Grady, the Alberta chief Crown prosecutor there. And she sent us an email saying, take a hike, and this will be our final communication on the matter. We just get warmed up. That might be your final communication, but it isn't our final communication because the law is a two-edged sword. So they go charge Chad Gillies with, this DMT offense. Okay, if they're found out that they're falsifying evidence, and I can't see how it would not be considered falsifying evidence, 3 grams of DMT that is being presented in the court as 2 kilograms of DMT, that's falsification of evidence. And this isn't a light matter. In Chad's case, there was an undercover operation for months. They put him under undercover operation. They, there was very knowledgeable police officers involved. They have an analytics department. They have access to labs and to the RCMP forensic units. They didn't do their due diligence. They just said, "Oh yeah, here's 2 kilograms of DMT, Your Honor." Think about that. And now Elizabeth O'Grady, the federal head prosecutor in Alberta, is privy to that information. We have a paper trail. We have emails. So now, if they're not going to do anything about it, what can we do about it? And there are things that we can do about it. And, big shout out to Paul Lewin, who is one of our sources of information on this. Paul Lewin is a criminal lawyer, deals with Section 56, deals with decrim programs and stuff. And I can't thank Paul enough for helping us out in this regard. But you can, as a lawyer can take a case like this and go to courts and say, this was falsifying evidence. And he says that has no likelihood of, it's tens of thousands of dollars, $50,000, $60,000 court time, 100. It's how much justice can you afford? But upon some more research that we have done, there is a process where any citizen can go do what's called laying a complaint. If you have credible information that a crime has been committed, you can swear out a complaint in front of a justice of the peace. If the justice of the peace says that there is merit to this complaint, he then can forward it to a judge. Judges don't like being lied to. If the judge says this has merit, he can issue arrest warrants, subpoenas. He has investigative powers. He can order the police to investigate these things. There's some serious legal implications in all this, which we intend to pursue. Which brings me to the reason why I'm making this video and why it's important that this becomes general knowledge in the ayahuasca community. And not only general knowledge in the ayahuasca community, is that we have to do something about this situation. It's on our watch. This is our watch. For all the facilitators out there, for people like myself that are involved, for people that have taken this medicine, this is happening on our watch. If we don't do something about this right here and right now, kiss ayahuasca ceremonies goodbye in Canada. We have a way forward. And just let me talk about the way forward. And this is what I call the proposal that we will be making, other than the legalities. Let's just not talk about, that's another issue. But the political issue here, the political way forward to have legal ceremonies in Canada is this. 2 policy changes. Now, how do we know this? Gustavo, thank you, my brother. Gustavo's from Brazil. He's in Canada. He helped us put together the information out of Brazil. Brazil has been dealing with ayahuasca churches for the last 100 years. The Santo Daime UDV churches started in Brazil in the early 1900s, 1920s, somewhere around there. Those are the ayahuasca, established ayahuasca churches, and most of the ayahuasca churches in Canada are Santo Daime UDV. The Companionship of the Sacred Vine is a shamanic church. It's a different heritage. It's a different way of doing ayahuasca ceremonies. The UDV, Santo Daime, they have their own way of doing ceremonies. We are shamanic-based ceremonies. It's two different things. It's the same ayahuasca. So in the early 1900s, the churches were established in Brazil. So, and you know, how did the churches get established? Well, they dealt with the Amazonian Indians who had been using ayahuasca for thousands of years. And that's where we all owe a debt of gratitude, a debt of cultural responsibility to the Amazonian Indians that helped us access this medicine, that shared this sacred religious medicine with us. So I just wanted to, mention that. So how did the Brazilian government deal with these issues of the ayahuasca churches? Well, at first they tried to eliminate them, tried to make them illegal or whatever. Then in the 1980s, and I mean, when I say Gustavo helped us out, we were translating Portuguese documents into English and going through how did all this happen. In the 1980s, in Brazil, they established some commissions to check out what should we do about these ayahuasca churches in Brazil. And it was a 20-year process, and it's interesting because the guys that were investigating this on the committees that were investigating the issues around ayahuasca churches, they went and sat in ceremony with people, and they took ayahuasca. At the end of their 20-year process, they came up with 2 policy changes, and it's important to understand policy changes in all of this. These are policy changes are not legislated. They're not an act of parliament. They're not an act of the legislature. They are just policy changes. The minister in charge of that area, so for example, enforcement, the minister involved in that area can say, hey, we're not busting people for these DMT charges. We're not going to do that. That's a policy, right? So even though the laws might be on the books, our policy is not to enforce those laws. That's what happened in Brazil. The other policy change was Brazil said the government of Brazil is not involved in regulating an ancestral medicine like ayahuasca and other ancestral medicines. It's a religious right. We're a state. We don't deal with religious rights. You guys have a church. Thank you very much. If somebody commits a crime, if somebody stabs somebody, if somebody steals something or whatever, then the legal system will take care of it. But we're not in the business of regulating ayahuasca churches. Thank you very much. Now, you can register your ayahuasca church in Brazil, but you don't have to. So what does 100 years of ayahuasca churches look like in Brazil? And once again, Gustavo, thank you so much. You can go to a Santo Daime church in a neighborhood in Brazil. You can go to a UDV church in a neighborhood in Brazil. You can go to a Buddhist ayahuasca ceremony. You can go to a Hindu ayahuasca ceremony. You can go to a Christian-based, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, Urubamba ayahuasca ceremony in Brazil. There's churches, centers for all of these. And there's been no breakdown in society. There's been no violence. There's been no deaths associated with having these churches. And we all know why exactly they're trying to suppress ayahuasca use is pharmaceutical industry profits. And the pharmaceutical industry is operating just fine in Brazil. They're profitable. Ayahuasca is not for everybody, let me tell you that. And you know this yourself if you've taken this medicine. I came to it as a last resort. Many people come to it as a last resort, nothing else. Chad Gillies, when he started his ayahuasca ceremonies in Costa Rica, like he said, the medical system, medical care system is depression, treatment resistant depression. That's one of the things, right? So, and all of these maladies, PTSD, treatment resistant depression, emotional traumas, you name it, that malady is spiritual. That's a spiritual sickness. I was a spiritually sick person when I started taking ayahuasca. That's how our society works. That's how trauma works. That's how, and you don't fix that with pharmaceutical industry protocols. Not in my case, I was what we call a hard case, and that's the people that are willing to come to an ayahuasca ceremony and face a very challenging ceremony where you can puke, you can shit your pants, you can, face very challenging personal opportunity. Ayahuasca holds a mirror up to your face and says, here's how you are. You want to change that? At least that's what she did with me. And I'm sure with all kinds of other people. So anyway, pardon me. God. Old man, just really emotional. So where was I? So there, if you look at the white paper on ayahuasca, you will find a whole bunch of references to studies that show the net benefit of ayahuasca to society. There's a long-term 11,000 person study that shows that people that use ayahuasca are more, they're healthier, they have scored better on psychological markers, they are more community oriented, they're more family oriented, they tend not to abuse drugs and alcohol, they're better citizens. So when these people go make arrests for ayahuasca, and the criteria for the arrest is it must be in the benefit of society, it must be of benefit to society. Think about that. Ayahuasca creates better systems. It solves problems. And the Crown Prosecutor guidelines specifically state it must be a benefit to society. There's no violence associated with ayahuasca. Health Canada's own documents say specifically, and we had to obtain these again through access to information, freedom of information, that there is no diversion of ayahuasca into black markets. There is no danger of addiction to ayahuasca, and you know as well as I do, you're never going to get addicted to ayahuasca. But so what are these Crown prosecutors doing? Who are they representing? Are they representing we the people, or are they representing corporate interests? And like I say, they've shot themselves in the foot. Here's what, now, knowledge is power. The fact that I know this is one thing, but now we have to do something about it. We have to register complaints. We have to lay citizen complaints. We have to put our information. This is what the arrests do. They give us the opportunity to engage the enforcement communities in education. It gives us the opportunity to engage the political process. I mean, I can go to my local MP and say, hey, here's this information about ayahuasca, and it's really good for people. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. We're dealing with stuff here. Or we can go in and say, we face religious prosecution, selective enforcement, Crown prosecutor guidelines, falsifying evidence. Oh, that gets people's attention, and that gets political attention. And riding on the back of that, we present our information about why take your stinking hands off our medicine. Stop it. Stop it. Enough of this bullshit. The political process has wrecked Canada. You've got drug addicts in the street, you've got homeless, and now they're saying, oh, you people who are a net benefit to society are a bunch of criminals. Bullshit. Sorry. I'm not a criminal because some asshole at the United Nations made a convention outlawing this dangerous substance that has been in use since prehistory. Think about the arrogance of that. Think about the sheer gall of some guy going, oh yeah, this medicine, this sacred medicine dates back into prehistory. It's a danger to society, this DMT stuff. And here is this just reminds me, sorry, there's so many details about this stuff, it's crazy. So let's talk about the United Nations ban on DMT. In the 1971 convention, I forget which one it was, they said, this DMT stuff, well, God, it's got potential for abuse. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, yes, potential for abuse. And all of our member nations need to make it illegal. And they have since issued statements saying, we never meant for ayahuasca plant materials to be under there. We didn't... How did all this happen? That ayahuasca was included in this ban on DMT. Whew, man, somebody went crazy with this stuff. Except in going through the documents in Brazil, they state, their committees made reports on this stuff, and they state in there that the United Nations suggested that ayahuasca be included under the ban on DMT. And that's why most of the countries around the world have put ayahuasca under this DMT designation. So bullshit. So they make public statements saying, we never meant for that to happen. And yet when they went to the countries themselves, they suggested now a suggestion from the United Nations, which is responsible for handing out billions of dollars of aid around the world and blah, 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 whatever else they do. A suggestion from them is like getting a suggestion from, I don't know, your mom when you were a kid. You better do this. So, there again is this whole corrupt system that is in operation, keeping you and me from our medicine and calling us criminals. Bullshit. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I need you to do. I can't do this by myself. Rick Brandel, Paul Lewin, Mike O'Connell, Natalia, all the people, Gustavo, that have been involved in putting this comprehensive package together. Special shout out to Mike O'Connell for his... Mike O'Connell is an advocate for the homeless in Guelph, and he does an amazing job advocating for the homeless there. Never taken ayahuasca. And him and I will spend hours talking through how do we do activism? How do we get changes? What's effective? What isn't? We put together a program here, folks, with some very, very knowledgeable people. This is information that is good information. It's a good program. We have a program we have a program. We know, you have to have objectives. You have to understand what you're asking for. Policy changes. The health minister tomorrow could do away with Section 56, or he could say to the Section 56 folks, give religious exemptions the same status as corporations enjoy, the same service standards. Service standards for corporations if they put in for a Section 56, they have to be dealt with in 75 days, and amendments to their exemption have to be dealt with in 30 days. Our request for an amendment at the CSV has been in front of the Section 56 people for the last 7 months, or going on 8 months, for a 5-minute job. No service standards. You know, they're not there to assist you in what you're doing. They're there to be the roadblock to what you're doing. And they have a few churches and they say, well, see, Section 56 works. It's a whitewash. It's a PR campaign. That's what it is. A health minister could go in tomorrow and say, new policy for all you little bureaucrats that have been screwing around. Institute service standards for religious exemptions. Done. The Attorney General's office could go in and issue guidelines for the Crown prosecutors. Say, a policy. We're no longer busting this stuff. We don't care. We're not busting people for DMT. Go to the borders and say, it's legal to bring ayahuasca into Canada. We have a religious right in Canada. We have an established religious right in Canada. Now, they took that away in the European Union, but we have an established religious right. You and I have the religious right to take ayahuasca in Canada. I'm talking every citizen, whether you're a member of a church or not a member of a church. If you have a religious conviction that this is for your religious rights, you have the right to ayahuasca. Now, you have to go beg Section 56 to access your rights. Well, it isn't a right then, is it? If I have a right to something, it means I have a right to something. It doesn't mean I have to go beg somebody for my right to my medicine, to my sacred substance that I use in my religious rituals. You see where we're going here? I need you to help us out. We have set up at Ayahuasca Canada. Let me see if I can do a screen share here. We have a program. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's go to Ayahuasca Canada here. We have a program. If you go onto the Ayahuasca Canada website, you will see on the main menu, home newsletter, sign up for the newsletter. But the newsletter is different from this program. It's the Ayahuasca Advocacy Program. So this is what you do. You fill out this form. You put your name and email address and phone number or whatever if you want in there. And you say, I'm willing to be an ayahuasca advocate in Canada. So what does that mean? Because everybody goes, well, I'm so busy, it's crazy. It means sending out an email. One email can make all the difference to this in the right place. You know how ayahuasca makes connections. One email, you could send out one email. You could make one phone call that will make the difference here. I can't do it all. Rick can't do it all. We can't do it all. The people that are active in this community, that have actively put this together, I've been working on this full time for 8 months to put this together, and gladly. And now we need your help. This is a historical turning point for ayahuasca in Canada. It's the future of how ayahuasca ceremonies will be handled in the legal sense and in a political sense in Canada at this time. This is the turning point. There's not going to be any more ayahuasca ceremonies in Canada. They've been shut down right now from all the facilitators I know and all the people I've talked to. They've been shut down. People are using the last of their medicines that they have, and a lot of facilitators are just not ordering any more medicine until we can figure out some way to do this. That's my opinion. That's what I've been told from a lot of people now. Is that true right across the board? I don't know, because it's all these things are underground. They're under, a lot of facilitators. I find out about facilitators that have been operating for years, in Canada. Somebody say, hey, you should talk to this guy. I talked to that guy. He said, I don't want to go with you guys I don't want to go be part of this whole thing. If we don't do this at this point in time, at this historical turning point, kiss them goodbye. You know, the only way you'll be able to go to have a legal ayahuasca ceremony in Canada will be to get on a plane and fly to some country where it's legal, and that'll be the end of it. And it's a turning point here. So I'm urging you, go sign up on the advocacy program. People say, how much time commitment will it be? It'll be as much time as you want to commit. 10 minutes. 5 minutes. How long does it take to send an email, phone somebody? We have the information here. We will give you that information. Say, here's what we're doing here. All you have to do is email this guy, put this in, make a complaint, do whatever, and we'll lay out a program for you. And if you don't want to do something like that, we need IT work, we need WordPress work, we need social media work, we need to organize. And this came up in our Zoom too. You know, somebody was talking. He says, I'm not a somebody that's going to join a community for ayahuasca. It's individualistic work, and this isn't something that's on my radar. Well, that's fine. I'm not knocking anybody for their personal choice, but I'm telling you right now that if we don't act collectively, I use collective, he's not part of a collective. Okay, don't be part of a collective, that's fine. I totally respect that. But if enough of us don't act collectively at this time, if you facilitators are out there with your email lists, tell them there's people on your email lists that will gladly send out an email or do some other type of work, some advocacy work for ayahuasca. We need these people. Send an email out to your group, people that have been touched by this medicine, and say, look, here's an opportunity. If you want to do some advocacy work, here's the link. And if you support this, and if you don't, that's fine as well. But I'm telling you, this is the historical turning point. And maybe I'll just shut it off there. Special thanks to Paul Lewin, our legal counsel in all this, Mike O'Connell, Gustavo. Thank you for putting in all that work. God, I'm old and sentimental. Rick Brandel, my warrior brother. Tiger, my shaman brother. Oh my God, I love you, man. Let me say a word about facilitators. Everything that I do, all the work I do in Ayahuasca Canada, Companionship of the Sacred Vine, is for the facilitators, the people that have dedicated themselves to this medicine. You hear this bullshit about, oh, well, people go down to the jungle in Peru and come back after a trip and they're going to serve the medicine. Bullshit. That is not, facilitators that I know in Canada, and maybe that happened with the odd person, but ayahuasca is going to weed those guys out. You know what I'm talking about. This is strong medicine. You don't just do a few ceremonies and decide to go serve the medicine yourself, or maybe you do. I don't know. But I don't think it's a likely scenario myself. And these facilitators are the backbone of ayahuasca in Canada. And God bless you. Some of these people have spent 8-9 years in the jungle. They work with their with their maestros. They work with their curanderos, their ayahuasqueros, their lineage shamans, and they dedicate themselves to understanding this medicine and being able to serve this medicine and being able to sing Icaros and do and conduct ceremonies with integrity. And this is a sacred medicine. Make no doubt about that. So, hands off. Stop it. Stop this nonsense. Had it up to my eyeballs. God. Whew. Go sign up in the advocacy program. I'm urging you to do that. I'll continue to send out the emails to the email group, but I have like 1,000 people on my email group. We need to get to the broader community in Canada, and I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much for watching. This gone on for an hour already by the looks of things here, so I will sign off there. And look for our emails. Go sign up in the newsletter. Get involved. Get into the advocacy program. It isn't an onerous thing, and it's our democratic right. We have the right in Canada to do this, and we need to exercise our rights. So I'll shut up now. Take care.